Okay, so you've probably heard the legend of Beowulf, right? You've got the hero, the big party hall, and of course, the monster, Grendel, who comes to wreck the place. It's a classic tale of good versus evil. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the version we all know is really just one side of the coin? Because history, as you know, is usually written by the winners.
So let's ask a really big question here. What if Grendel wasn't born a monster at all? What if he was made into one? That's what we're going to dig into today. We're peeling back the layers of this ancient story to find something totally different. Not a tale of a mindless beast, but of a grieving son who is pushed right to the edge by an act of just unimaginable cruelty. To really get Grendel, you've got to go all the way back to the beginning. So picture this, ancient Denmark. It's this brutal, beautiful Viking land, and it's a place where fear makes all the decisions. And anything that people don't understand, it gets a label. It gets called a monster, and it gets dealt with violently.
But way, way far from all that, high up on some remote mountain, lived a Jotun, a giant, and his young son, Grendel. And these two, they weren't creatures from a nightmare, not at all. They lived in peace, totally cut off from the world of men. The father even had this incredibly human-like face, full of emotion, and he had this deep, powerful bond with his child.
And this is where it all goes so horribly wrong. The Viking king is out on a hunting trip, and he sees them. But he doesn't see a father and son playing. No, he sees a threat. And worse, he sees an opportunity for fame and glory. So the king's party sets an ambush. The giant, he doesn't even fight back. All he does is try to shield his son. But he's cut down, and he falls from the cliff to his death, all while his young son just watches in absolute horror.
That one single brutal act, it plants the seed for everything that comes next. The kid, Grendel, completely traumatized, drags his father's body to a cave by the sea, and for years, he just grows up in darkness, totally alone. His only companion is this crushing grief for his murdered dad, and all the while, he's watching the very men who celebrated that murder.
Years go by, and that same king builds this huge, magnificent mead hall. And the sounds from it, the laughter, the songs, the celebration, they echo all the way to Grendel's cave. But to him, that's not a party. That's the sound of his father's killers cheering for what they did. And that constant noise, it's like a constant mockery. It becomes the trigger that finally awakens this burning need for justice.
And right here, you can see the two realities just couldn't be more different. To the Vikings, he's a demon from the fens, some mindless monster. But Grendel's reality? It's completely different. His attacks are, they're surgical. He storms the hall, sure, but he only goes after the armed warriors, the men who carry on that cycle of violence. He never, ever lays a hand on the women, the children, or the elderly. This isn't just random chaos, it's targeted revenge. So this is where the hero from the old stories finally shows up, Beowulf, or in this version, Leo. He arrives on the scene. And yeah, he's a famous warrior, a total powerhouse. But here's the thing, he's more than just muscle. He's also an investigator. He pays attention to details, and right away, he gets this feeling that the official story, it just doesn't add up.
This is the one question that just keeps eating at Leo. I mean, think about it. Why would a so-called mindless monster go out of its way to spare innocent people? A real beast go out of its way to spare innocent people. A real beast, one that's just driven by bloodlust? It would kill everybody. But Grendel doesn't. And this strange pattern, this restraint, it makes Leo question everything he's been told. He starts looking for a motive, not just a monster. His investigation leads him to this outcast, a witch named Alina, and she gives him the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. She tells him flat out, Grendel isn't fighting for blood. He's fighting for a debt of blood that's owed to his father. He's fighting for a debt of blood that's owed to his father. See? He's not a force of chaos. He's a force of consequence. He's seeking justice for a crime that everyone else has conveniently forgotten.
But just as Leo is starting to put it all together and understand the truth, the Viking soldiers, they make a huge, catastrophic mistake. Grendel's quest had been about justice, a very specific kind of justice. But what they do next is going to push him past the point of no return, and it's going to turn his grief into something much, much darker.
So the soldiers, they find Grendel's cave, and inside, they find the one thing he has left of his father, his skull, and they desecrate it. For Grendel, this is the final violation. It's the ultimate insult. That skull was his last physical connection to his past, the absolute center of his grief, And seeing it destroyed, it just breaks him completely. His calculated mission for justice just shatters, and all that's left is this raw, burning desire for total annihilation.
Now he's fueled by nothing but pure, unfiltered rage. Grendel launches his final assault on the mead hall, and this time there's no calculation, there's zero restraint. All that's left is a broken heart's furious demand to just make it all end. Leo confronts him, and what happens next isn't some glorious battle between a hero and a monster. It's a flat-out tragedy. Leo manages to trap Grendel's arm with a heavy chain, but in a final, desperate act of will, Grendel does something unthinkable. He literally rips his own arm out of its socket just to get free. Mortally wounded, he stumbles away from the hall, bleeding out with every step. And that's how he dies. Not in the hall surrounded by his enemies, but alone on a cold black sand beach. His story ends exactly as it began, in loss, in isolation, a victim of a war that was declared on him the day his father was murdered. But the violence, it's not over. Grendel's mother, lost in her own grief, then attacks the hall for revenge. And Leo, he kills her too. The cycle just keeps turning, an eye for an eye, and it seems like it's just going to go on and on until nobody's left. But Leo is about to face one final defining choice. And what we're really talking about here is the cycle of violence itself. It's a trap, right? One act of aggression just leads to another, and that creates this chain of revenge that can go on for generations. It's a fire that just keeps feeding itself. And in this moment, Leo is holding the match for the next great fire. Because when he goes back into that dark sea cave, Leo discovers one last secret. Hiding there, in the shadows, is another child. It's Grendel's son, now an orphan, just like Grendel was all those years ago. The entire horrible, tragic story is sitting there, ready to start all over again. And this is the moment Leo becomes a true hero. He looks at this child, and he doesn't see a future monster. He sees another victim. He finally understands the true cost of this endless war, and he makes a choice. He lowers his sword. He not only spares the child, but he gives Grendel and his mother a proper, dignified burial. And he swears to keep their real story a secret, to finally break the chain. And Leo's choice leaves us with this huge question, one that echoes way beyond this old legend. After seeing this whole story, a story of fear being weaponized, of unprovoked violence, and a grief so deep it was mistaken for pure evil, who, at the end of the day, are the real monsters?